Good morning. We're going to get started with a invocation from Mlk Cox, pastor of Spiritual Formation and Justice at the Table, followed by Quenisha Darrington, Cub Scouts Pack 1510, who will lead our Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Let us pray. Loving, eternal God, we come together, this first City Council gathering of 2020. We come together to hold truth and hope in our hearts and in our hands. We pray for our city to be a city of peace, a city of shalom, where all belong and where all can flourish. We pray that each and every person of Oklahoma City, indiscriminate of age, religion, or no religion, ethnicity, race, gender identity, love orientation, socioeconomic and documentation status, ability, or neurodiversity, senses true belonging, and possesses the ability to flourish. I pray for the leaders of the city here today. I pray that each one can envision the city as a beautiful garden where some have been given the opportunity to flourish. I pray that the leaders sense their call to tend and care for the flourishing parts of the garden while at the same time uproot the weeds that block growth and remove the rocks and barriers of injustice so every part of the garden is nourished. I pray Oklahoma City is a city set on a hill, salt and light, a city to the nations, a city of hope. We pray these things in your name, the name meaning soteria in the Greek, which means salvation, integration, wholeness, and restoration. In the name of love incarnate, the Word made flesh, we pray in your name. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Quenisha. I call this meeting of the City Council to order, this first meeting of 2020. We have no ceremonial presentations under Office of the Mayor today, but we do have three substantive items that we will require executive session to discuss. We will handle those at the conclusion of our other business, but we will go ahead and I would invite a motion to take a vote now on going into executive session.
Vote each separately.
Yeah, right. So a motion, this would be a motion on 3A2. 3A2. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now 3B2.
Move 3B2 into executive session.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now 3C2.
Move 3C2 into executive session.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And as stated, we'll handle those three executive sessions at the conclusion of our other business. This brings us to item 4, Journal of Council Proceedings. We have items A and B we can take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 5, request for uncontested continuances. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir. On page 18, we have item 9A6, and this is a request for a deferral, a request from the applicant. It's 9A6, SPUD 1126, and the request is to defer this to the January 21st meeting. On page 22, we have under item 9K1, all of these items will be stricken. Item C, 532 Southwest 27th Street, the owner is repaired. Item E, 1912 Northwest 30th Street, to re-notify the owner. Item F, 120 Southwest 32nd Street, to re-notify the owner. Item K, 1440 Northwest 49th Street, to re-notify the owner. On page 22, item 9L1C, 3801, and all these also will be stricken. 3801 West Liberty Street, the owner is secured. By item E, 5805 North Roth Avenue, the residence is occupied now. Item H, 1334 South Drive, to re-notify the owner. Item I, 1326 Northwest 6th Street, the owner has secured. Item K, 3944 Northwest 11th Street, to re-notify the owner. And item N, 121 Southeast 17th Street, the owner to re-notify the owner. On page 23, still under item 9L1, item W, 1435 Northwest 39th Street, the owner is secured. Item Z, 907 Southwest 47th Street, to re-notify the owner. Item AB, 1440 Northwest 49th Street, to re-notify. Item AC, 1832 Northeast 50th Street, also to re-notify. Item AD, 329 Southeast 61st Street, to re-notify the owner. Item AE, 1452 Southwest 65th Street, to re-notify the owner. Item AG, 444 Northwest 89th Street, the owner is secured. Item AI, 1232 Northwest 99th Street, the owner has secured. Item AK, 501 Northwest 140th Street, the owner has secured. On page 23, under item 9M1, all of these we will strike from the agenda. Item B, 3801 West Liberty Street, the owner is secured. Item C, 5805 North Roth Avenue, it's been occupied by the owner, or it's been occupied, the residence is now occupied. Item D, 1334 South Drive, to re-notify the owner. Item F, 3944 Northwest 11th Street, to re-notify the owner. On page 24, under item 9M1 still, item H, 121 Southeast 17th Street, to re-notify the owner. Item I, 532 Southwest 27th Street, the owner has repaired. Item S, 907 Southwest 47th Street, is to re-notify the owner. Item T, 1440 Northwest 49th Street, to re-notify the owner. Item U, 329 Southeast 61st Street, to re-notify. Item W, 1232 Northwest 99th Street, the owner has secured. And item Y, 501 Northwest 140th Street, the owner is secured. And that's all the items that I have.
Okay. Back to item 6, revocable permits. We have item 6A, revocable permit with In Motive, Oklahoma for the Frozen Nose 5K on February 9th using Wheeler Park and the Oklahoma City Community Foundation River Trail. And we do have someone who has signed up to speak, Carrie Ralston.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Frozen Nose 5K is going to be February 9th at 2 p.m. at Wheeler Park. Our charity partner this year is Socks for Love, so we are warming hearts feet first. We offer finisher medal, a swag package, free photos, and are encouraging everybody to wear their wackiest socks in support of our charity. Love to have you guys out. So.
All right.
Well, it sounds like a great event. I will motion for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. 6B is the revocable right-of-way use permit with the OKC Martin Luther King Jr. Coalition to hold the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Parade on January 20th on Walker between 6th and Reno. Doesn't look like anyone has signed up to speak. Oh, please, welcome. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address.
My name is William Jones. Address is 5004 Federal Court, Oklahoma City. Just letting you know the parade has been planned. Everything seems to be going well, and I'm prepared to proceed on 20th January. And all of you all are invited.
Will you give us the route so those who are watching?
The route will be straight down your road here from 6th Street in Walker to Reno and Walker.
Right. So we're excited, a great weekend. I'm sorry.
No, you do it.
I am so sorry. Great weekend ahead, and I'm going to lean towards Ward 6 to move that forward.
Well, I'm excited that Ward 6 can host, and I will motion for approval.
Thank you. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you all very much. Hopefully see you there.
All right, we will now recess the council meeting and convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, where we have items A through F, and we do have a presentation on item C.
Correct. So Chris Browning is going to make a quick presentation on this item for, it's our new electronic plan review system, and just wanted him to give us an update on what this will do for us in our process.
Good morning and Happy New Year. Back in July of 2018, the Water Utilities Trust awarded a contract to CH2M Hill to help us integrate and enhance our technology. The goal was to improve the quality of service for our customers and the citizens of Oklahoma City. Their charge was to evaluate all business processes and identify opportunities for integration. The first thing they did was they determined what the current state workflow process was, and then they helped us develop a future state, a desired future state for all of the work that we do in utilities. One of those things that we do is we review development plans, and we do that with other departments as well. So this is a collaborative effort with utilities, public works, fire, and development services. So after they did the workflow process evaluation, they developed recommendations to integrate our solutions, and where necessary, they developed standards for additional or replacement technologies. The first item out of the gate was the development plan review process. So they looked at the workflow process, and they completed that back several months ago. They selected some software to enable us to put together an electronic plan review process. Right now, everything's paper. The developers, engineers bring their stacks of plans to us, and we review them, not concurrently, but individually. And so the process takes sometimes months. So what we're trying to do is streamline that process. So right now, we have selected a software. We went ahead and we awarded that to TruePoint Solutions. Back a couple months ago, we have a contract where I was able to give them a PO to go ahead and get the process started. So today, what we're asking you all to do is to ratify that PO, and also to allow us to get into a maintenance contract with them, an annual maintenance contract with them, so that going forward we can keep everything updated. So the state right now is we have the software, we're getting ready to go ahead and put it in so that all of the business processes can be integrated into that software, where all of the bugs can get worked out, and then within a couple of months we'll be ready to go live. So the good thing is not only will we be able to review concurrently, but our developers and our engineers can also see what the status of their plans is throughout the process. So that's going to help everybody understand where we are and maybe some of the comments that are being made along the way, so that we can speed up the development process throughout the city. So hopefully we'll have that up and running in just a couple of months. That's a summary of where we were and where we are today, and with your approval, this item will be submitted to the Water Trust this afternoon for their approval as well. You'll enable us to move forward with this project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So what you're telling me is the developer from their office will be able to see the status of their project?
Yes.
That will increase dramatically the time by which we can review things, people informed, and if there's a question, it can get back to the developer that we can respond electronically?
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Yeah, this is a huge step for us. When do you think they'll be able to start submitting electronic plans versus paper?
Councilman, we hope within the next few months that we'll have everything loaded in, the process debugged, and in operation. So we're looking at sometime early spring.
And then what are the plans to be able to, I guess, reach out to the development company to make sure that our efforts are in line with what they want to submit?
They have been engaged in this process the whole time.
Good. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have no other presentations under OCMFA, so we could take all the items with one motion.
I'd move the items.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, where we have items A and B we can take with one motion.
Move the items.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn OCPPA, where we'll convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. We merely have claims and payroll, but we'll go ahead and approve that as well.
Move the item.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust and reconvene as the council, where we now find ourselves on page 4 of the printed agenda, item 7, the consent docket. And I believe for the first time in the Freeman administration, there are no presentations on the consent docket. So if there is anyone who would like to pull something out for separate discussion or separate vote, just call it out. So we could just, you just want to just move it? I know that feels weird, but just go with it.
I'll move the consent docket.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Moving on to the concurrence docket. That is page 14 of your printed agenda. Item 8. We can take all of these items with one motion.
Move the items.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We are now on page 17 of your printed agenda. Item 9, items requiring separate votes. And there is, I need to pull one up out of order because one of the planning cases is dependent on passage first of item 9F. So this is the third of 3 meetings considering this ordinance on final hearing, creating a healthy neighborhoods overlay district. And Councilwoman Nice, would you like to lead this?
Yes, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, ma'am.
Nope.
Well, with that, I'll just move for approval.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And I believe you would like an emergency on this.
Yes, I would move for an emergency on this, please.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll return to the beginning of the items requiring separate votes. Item 9A, these were all ordinances on final hearing recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. 9A1 is at 8601 Southwest 89th Street, going from AA to RA2. Councilman McAtee, we do have someone who signed up to speak.
Has someone signed up to speak?
Yes, not clear which side of it they're on. Would you like me to call them up?
Call them up.
All right, Billy and Linda Ashley.
Good morning, I'm Linda Ashley, 11812 Sorrento Lane, and this is my application.
Okay.
This is family land, and my father and mother passed away. My father passed away last March. I have one sibling that lives in Pennsylvania. He is not interested in this land. I have 2 grown sons and 7 grandchildren. I do not know if any of them would like to live there. However, I'm a retired Mustang public school educator, so I believe in that district, and I would just like to have the option for them to be able to build there should they choose to.
Thank you, ma'am. This was presented to the Planning Commission and passed for approval. Is there any questions from the council? Seeing none, I move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, 9A2. This is at 6022 East I-240 Service Road, going from I-1 and I-2 to R4. Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Mayor.
No, sir.
No, no one has signed up to speak on this. It's a senior housing center past Planning Commission. Before I move for approval, I do need to attach an emergency on this, something we'd agreed to previously but was left off.
Okay. Well, you have that option as it's noticed at 9A, so there'll be 2 votes, though.
Okay. So move for approval?
Yes.
and then move for approval with emergency.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
All right. If anyone doesn't have any questions, I'd move for approval.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
And I would make the motion that we move it with emergency.
Okay. Got a motion and a second for the emergency. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, 9A3, to add the HNO Healthy Neighborhood Overlay District in the general area of the 73111 zip code, Northeast 16th to East Wilshire, between Kelly and Bryant. Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, I know no one has signed up to speak, and we've passed this one, so I'll ask that we do the same again, so I'll move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And I understand we might like to do the emergency as well.
Yes, I would like to move the emergency, please.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. And the emergency passes unanimously as well. 9A4, 19000 Northwestern Avenue, going from PUD 201 to PUD 1733. Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, is the applicant present? Please come forward. I have some questions. And this is a planned unit development for, again, 19,000 Northwestern Avenue, and there are quite a few different things that are happening in this parcel. So I guess my questions are, when I'm looking at page 3 of 19, it's asking for no additional approvals, and I'm curious to know what exactly are we doing with this piece of property. I see mixed-use commercial, office, and residential, but do we have a defined true use of what we're wanting to do?
Well, it's fairly open right now. There's 2 tracks out on the front tract on Western. It's commercial, and we have limited liquor stores and certain uses on that front tract next to Western. We have no drive-in windows on the north 150 feet. We met with all the neighbors before we ever submitted this and listened to everything they said, and we added everything into the document that they wanted to see to protect their properties. So the back track, track 2, is mixed use with O2 with some restaurant use, and it could also possibly be some smaller multifamily senior living areas. So it's a real true mixed use, so lots of different uses. And again, we've met with all the neighbors. One thing I would like to add from the floor that was in a previous document that didn't get in this one, we've told all the neighbors that we will have no deliveries or any kind of parking or anything on the back side of the buildings closest to the homes. We've agreed to leave the trees and the 20 feet around it and replace any that we remove if it creates a gap of more than 25 feet. We also agreed on the south side. There's a church on the southwest corner of this property, a residence on the southeast corner, and we agreed to put our fence at the greenbelt line instead of on the property line so they could enjoy the greenbelt instead of us. So, again, met with all the neighbors, and they were all in favor of, by the time we got through with the meeting, they're all in favor, but I do want to add that one comment from the floor that we will not have any deliveries. Kind of like Red Rock Cafe out by the lake. You can't park on the lake side of it. There's no deliveries on the lake side. It's all out into the front. So we'll have no deliveries or anything on the back side near the houses. But right now, it's fairly open as far as it could be 3 or 4 things. Some restaurants, some shops, again, no bars, no personal storage, no vape shops, no, like I said, no liquor stores. So pretty mixed. And like I said, the neighbors were okay with what we had proposed with some of their suggestions. I hope that answered. That was a long-winded answer for maybe more than you needed or wanted. But
that's fine. I guess my question with you saying that is I'm looking at the track 2, and we have alcohol beverage retail sales, we have drinking established, alcohol permitted, so are we able to just take those things out, or what are we doing?
Well, we're not doing any liquor stores. There can be restaurants that do serve alcohol, but there's no bars. So we do want restaurants, sit-down, alcohol not permitted, alcohol permitted, and limited alcohol permitted. So it can be a restaurant with alcohol, but not, like I said, no bars. Okay. And there's different limits as to what they can do. Well, you know all that. So.
And the reason I'm asking you all of these questions is because I have another zoning case which is literally on the opposite side of this
Okay.
neighborhood.
Okay.
Where the neighbors have a problem.
Okay.
And I'm concerned that they have a problem with what's happening over there and not with what's happening over here.
Well,
and I know that
sure.
has nothing to do with you, but it is a concern for me when it comes to the neighborhoods and the neighbors that are over here.
Sure. And like I said, we met with all of it was back in the summer, and met with all the neighbors at the house that's on the property where it says existing structure, and went through what we had planned and listened to all their concerns and added them all into the documents.
I guess now my question, and I don't know who can answer this for me, when it comes to murals and what that looks like as far as having without additional approvals, how does that work when it comes to our city process when we usually require that go through our department for murals?
On a mural specifically?
For murals to go on property.
Do you know that, Bob? Yeah. I'm not sure of the answer.
Bob Teener, Development Services Director. I'm really not sure on the answer either. That's something I'd have to check with plan review, because typically there's a review if they're in certain districts, but I'm not sure how that would work here.
One thing that we may have is I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
As a safeguard, all these have to come back to Planning Commission with a site plan, any building that comes up here. So it would go back through Planning Commission again with any specific site plans, because we don't have those specifics now, but we will come back at Planning Commission to do that.
With that being said, I would like to remove that then. Either way, it still has to come back. I would like to remove without additional approvals required for murals.
That's fine.
That's a concern when it comes to just anything being placed on these buildings, and therefore other people don't have to go through some. It will require you all not to have to go through a process that others would have to go through, if
That's
that makes
fine.
sense.
That's fine.
With that, I'm skeptical, but I will go ahead and ask for this to be approved.
Thank you.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9A5, this is at 940 North MacArthur Boulevard, going from C3 to PUD 1743. Councilman McAtee.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is the applicant present? This item was brought before the Planning Commission and passed unanimously, but I would like you to make some comments about how you see the site being developed and whether it'll be an asset to that area. North MacArthur in this area has been a challenge for years, and we want to see the new things that are going in to be positive things and not negative.
Brad Reed with Craft and Toll, 300 Point Parkway Boulevard, here on behalf of the applicant. The applicant's total aggregate, they actually own Total Trucking. They're over on Reno currently. They've outgrown their site there, so they need something else. They own basically a fleet of belly dump aggregate trucks. So we came through with a PUD. That area is, it's a pretty heavy industrial area over there. We needed I-2. There is 3 residences, which are sort of the outliers for the area. So we've agreed to an extra 25-foot landscape buffer along with the fencing requirements from I-2 with the residential there. And so we think that, the area over there, we've limited the I-2 to just what they need, though. They do have the large trucks, so they did need the heavier industrial, but we've limited it to just those uses.
Has anybody signed up?
No, sir.
With no objections, unless there's some questions from the council, I move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Item 9A6 was previously deferred, which brings us to 9A7 at 4700 Northeast 36, going from C1 to SPUD 1163. Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, has anyone signed up to speak, Ms. Francis?
No, ma'am.
All right, with that, I'll move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9A8, 8013 Northwest 122nd Street, going from PUD 361 to SPUD 1164. Councilman Stonecipher.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an ordinance on final hearing for rezoning. It's an office retail development. There were no protests at the the Planning Commission. It was unanimously approved by Planning. Not aware of any protest today, so I would move for its approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9A9, 1137 Northwest 2nd Street, going from I-2 to SPUD 1165. Councilwoman Hammond?
Yes, is the applicant present? I plan to motion to approve, but I did want to just have the applicant come up and kind of give a little overview, because this is a pretty big change for that specific area just west of downtown. So I just kind of wanted to give everyone a bit of an idea about what's going on over there, and thank you.
Good morning. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates. Here on behalf of the applicant, this is in an area of industrial-type development. It's next to the railroad tracks, just south of the dog food plant, and it has an existing group of buildings that are going to be retained. It's basically going to be converted to a brewery and other restaurant/outdoor uses that would be able to use this green area for outdoor seating. We're providing limited parking, and they will have the opportunity to do outdoor film events, backing up again to the railroad tracks. But it's a mixed use just west of the downtown area, which is kind of a growing area now. You've seen a couple cases recently of mixed use in here.
And can you remind me, so with the parking, there was an agreement that something could happen on that going forward? Can you give us a little bit of that?
So what we agreed to is if something develops here in the future, then we would come back and find alternate parking solutions, either through off-site agreements or other agreements.
Yeah, so when I saw this application, I was actually like, do they have to have that much parking? Because you're so close to a few transit lines. It's really in a walkable area. So I'm just excited to see a developer sort of thinking in this way forward thinking about areas that don't really need that level of parking, especially when it's a place where people are going to go drink. It seems a little odd that we require a certain amount of parking.
And we are providing for an drop-off area for
yeah, so I appreciate that kind of thinking, and I'll motion for approval.
Second. We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item 9A10. This is at 225 East Britton Road, going from O2 to SPUD 1166. Councilwoman Nice?
Yes, Mr. Johnson, you might as well come back. And this, in actuality, kind of just amends the existing parking and adds to the space that's around the subject area, if that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, so this is next to the tower that's on the north side of Britton Road. As you know, there's a lot of medical uses that have been added to the area north. The old Opubco building has been demolished to the south and is getting ready to be redeveloped. American Fidelity has done a ton of development south of there. Oklahoma is being improved and being realigned with the drive, so there's a signal going in there now. It's a public-private partnership with Oklahoma City to put that signal in. And so it's generating quite a bit of traffic in there with all the medical uses to the north. So this development is anticipated to put in you can see the tower in the back, and put in a retail front and a parking structure in the back to allow for the retail use and elevated parking behind it. So it really densifies this corner, which is now just a parking lot.
All right, so appreciate that. With that, I'll move for approval.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes.
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. 9A11, this is a variety of addresses in the 1300 block of Northwest 2nd Street, going from R3 to SPUD 1167. Councilwoman Hammond.
Yeah, so this is another application, a sort of changing area. I'd love for the applicant to kind of just speak to what y'all are up to.
Yes, my name is David Brewer with DAB Architecture on behalf of the client. This project we're calling the PC Minis is a small planned unit development project made up of small starter homes ranging around 700 square feet in a condensed area with limited parking. The intent is to provide a residential area close enough to the proximity of Oklahoma City that's bikeable and walkable. We have already through the planning department received some technical evaluations that we've agreed to revise our design intent on some of the issues, and I've already started that process. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Well, I don't have any, and again, I appreciate the forward thinking about the being in an area where maybe people only have one car per household or no cars. So with that, I will motion for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Now we come to 9B. This is an ordinance on final hearing. It was recommended for approval at the Planning Commission. It is at 4600 East Wilshire Boulevard, going from AA to PUD 1730. Due to the high levels of official protest, it currently requires 7 affirmative votes for passage. Councilwoman Nice, and this was also deferred from November 19th.
Yes. This has been a long few months working with both parties and the neighbors to ensure that both parties are comfortable. And obviously, we have had a lot of conversation, some good and a lot not so good. But I have been told that today we have a resolution between both parties. And I am happy that both parties were able to speak and finally come with a resolution for that. So I know I have Mr. Box here. I also have Mr. Rose here. I don't know who wants to go first, but I expect for both of you to speak and speak to what has taken place and where we are now.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Eric Rose. I'm an attorney. I represent Wilshire Coltrane Sooner Preservation, Inc., a 501c3 corporation that's organized to protect the land in this area. David Box represents the applicant in this case. After a series of negotiations that lasted for some time, Mr. Box and I have agreed to an amendment to his PUD design statement that will resolve the issues between us. I think I want to say that all the people who are here are from that neighborhood, and I'm grateful that they're attending. What you see on the screen is not the agreed upon design, but it was submitted by Mr. Box to the city yesterday, I guess. David? Yes? Okay. So the one that is on file, the amended PUD design statement with the master development plan attached, filed with the city yesterday, is the one that you'd be voting on. So the changes, the key changes involve, stand by. The key changes to that design statement involve an assurance that there will be no more than 21 lots permitted within the settlement. This, by the way, is the master development plan. It's quite different from the one you see on the screen, but this is the one you'll be voting on. There will be no more than 21 lots permitted within the PUD, and tree preservation will be at a 60% level. So this design, I think, is a remarkable way to resolve this problem. I think the developer can do well with it, and it will protect the interests of surrounding landowners. It's important that when one of you moves to approve this, that you approve the one that is on file with the city as of yesterday, not the one that's on the screen.
Thank you. Let's hear from Mr. Box.
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. Agree with everything Mr. Grove said. There are 2 additional items that need to be added, minimum 30,000 square foot lot size, and then a 35-foot buffer around the border of the PUD. All of those changes have been made. That PUD master design statement has been emailed to Mr. Tiener as well as the city clerk. So what we're asking you to do is two things. One, make a motion on the amendment to the master design statement consistent with what Mr. Groves and myself said and consistent with the master design statement that is in possession of the city clerk, and then ultimately asking for you to approve the PUD. Be happy to answer any questions. I want to echo what Mr. Groves said. This has been a long process. I want to thank all of you for all the time you spent in listening to both sides, and I'm grateful that we were able to come to a resolution. It's always a treat to be able to stand here arm in arm with Eric.
We need a picture. This is very rare.
Yes. Mr. Couch took a picture last time we were standing next to each other.
Are there any questions from the council?
You've got it.
I think the one thing I'd like to say is I've received quite a few phone calls on this matter, and I appreciate all you did to bring everybody together, and I'm glad we were able to come up with an agreement, and I hope the neighbors are all happy.
Okay. To the developer, are you okay with this plan? To the neighbors, excuse me, gentlemen, I want to look at my neighbors. They're right behind you.
They are.
All of my neighbors, are you okay with this plan? Give me a nod or a yes. Okay. And the reason I'm asking all of you is because we are the ones who have had the conversations. So I want to ensure that we are okay with what's happening and what will take place. With that, I will move for approval with the amendments that have been suggested and filed with the clerk.
Kenny would like a separate vote.
First motion's for the amendment.
Okay. I will ask for the amendment to the revised zoning application.
The amendment as described by both councils. Is that fair? And as already filed, evidently.
We're all trying to figure this out. So I will ask that we move to amend the proposed zoning request. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Fair. Got it. Motion and a second for the amendment.
Yes, that's what I said.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Now, I will ask that we approve the proposal that has been presented.
As amended.
Yes,
as amended.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the application as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously and with the required...
Thank you for all your time and attention to this case.
Thank you, neighbors, and thank you all.
Do they need an emergency?
No, it's just optional.
Okay, that brings us to 9C. We have ordinances on final hearing that were recommended for approval. 9C1 is closing a portion of the right-of-way of North Blackwelder at 1631 Northwest 21st Street. Councilwoman Hammond?
Yes, this just seems to be mostly a house cleaning in some ways, so I will motion for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9C2, closing a platted utility easement in Westgate Marketplace 3, north of Southwest 15th and west of South MacArthur. Councilman McAtee?
No, sir.
You would, sir, give the council a brief overview of what you intend to say.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, sir.
Give the council an overview.
Mark Grubbs, 1800 South Sarah Road. We're asking for the closing of this easement because we're relocating a sanitary sewer line and providing a new easement. So simply to allow for construction of a new 7-Eleven store.
It was passed unanimously by the Planning Commission. Unless the council has some questions, I move for approval.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, 9D. This is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval. These are some special permits. 9D1, is a special permit to construct a telecommunication tower in the R1 residential district at 3500 North Meridian. Councilman Cooper.
David, do you want to speak to this particular item, please?
Sure. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. I also have a team of folks with me that can touch on everything from site acquisition to RF to why this was needed. The city also has a consultant that's been hired on all of these cases now that can speak to it. This did go to Planning Commission. They recommended approval of this unanimously. It is a stealth design. In the packet that you have, you will see the photo sims that show it's a bell tower type of design intended to kind of blend in more. The consultant hired by the city has reviewed the technical data provided by my client, agrees with the submittal, and has likewise recommended approval. I do feel the eyes of Councilman Stone glaring at me, who is your resident RF expert from his previous life. But Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. As you're aware, this is kind of an interesting area of the law, regulated by federal law, and there's certain things that cities can and can't do when it comes to approving or denying these. In this case, I think we have met our burden, which is further justified by the city's own consultant recommending approval. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have more of a process question. I seem to remember us voting, maybe we just voted to, it's not all the way done yet, but that we wouldn't be seeing these case by case at some point. Is my memory correct?
Yes, that's been is being reviewed by the Planning Commission, and it'll be back in a month or so.
Okay. Well, I would move approval.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
9D2, special permit to allow automotive sales in the C3 Community Commercial District at 1800 North Portland. Councilwoman Hammond.
Yeah, this is like you described, and I know that at Planning Commission and from staff there were a few TEs, so I will move for approval.
And I don't know if he's just here to answer questions, but Jorge Mendres, would you like to speak? You're like on the verge of getting it passed if you want. Okay, all right, very good. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, 9E is an ordinance on final hearing. This is the third of three meetings to consider these changes to the personnel and retirement systems ordinances. This was previously explained as a kind of a tax update. We've already had the discussion and the hearing. Is there a motion to move forward and adopt the ordinance? Is there a second? Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9F was previously considered, which brings us to 9G. These are some ordinances on final hearing. 9G1 is establishing 60-degree angle parking within a proposed setback parking area on the east side of North Florida, et cetera, near Northwest 23rd. Councilwoman Hammond.
Yeah, is the applicant present? I mean, it's fine. I just thought these were already there, so maybe they're just not really built. So I'll just move for approval.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9G2, establishing one reserved parking space for the physically disabled within the proposed setback parking area on the east side of North Florida Avenue near Northwest 23rd. Councilwoman Hammond.
I will motion for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9G3, removing 2 metered parking spaces from the west side of South Walker, from et cetera, et cetera. Councilwoman Hammond.
I will also motion for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9H, these are public hearings relating to motor vehicles and traffic. I guess these were two ordinance proposed ordinance changes that were
Yeah,
explained.
Eric made a presentation on both of these. It just gives some more administrative authority to the Public Works Director to make some changes, emergency traffic control changes, or changes within school districts school zones as the districts make requests. And so this just gives some additional administrative authority to the Public Works Director.
So in our cycle of meetings where we consider ordinance changes, this is the second of 3 such meetings where we hold a public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under 9H1? This is the public hearing relating to these amendments to the motor vehicle and traffic ordinances. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under 9H2? This is likewise changes to our ordinances regarding motor vehicles and traffic. Seeing no one interested in speaking in these public hearings, I will move on to item 9I. This is an ordinance change to be introduced today, set for public hearing January 21st, final hearing February 4th, relating to miscellaneous provisions and offenses in the Oklahoma City Municipal Code regarding basically pistols and motor vehicles. So I believe we might have a presentation.
Yes, Steve Kreis with the Municipal Counselor's Office is here to explain the need for this change.
Good morning. So the state law changed last year that allows persons to carry a firearm without a concealed handgun license. Our city ordinance currently prohibits transporting a firearm in a vehicle unless you have a handgun license. So now we need to expand that to allow you to carry the handgun without the license as allowed by state law.
So if this law hadn't gone into effect on November 1st, we wouldn't have to be doing this city business?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Let's say a person found the state law problematic, and in voting right now, a council person can vote against this. Am I wrong?
Well, sure. I mean, maybe the basic question is, what if we didn't do this?
Well, then you wouldn't be in conformance with state law. Basically, if you encountered a person transporting a firearm without a concealed carry license, there's nothing you could do, even though the ordinance would make it illegal in the city. You couldn't enforce that.
We would
You'd
have
be
an
preempted.
unenforceable ordinance on our books.
Correct.
And so if we attempted to enforce our ordinance, we would be...
You would be...
The person who had been arrested would challenge that in court
Yes.
and would win.
Correct. Theoretically.
Okay.
One other, when I was reading this, my head spun a little bit because it also changes the definition of
That's
firearm
true.
pistol.
And
can you talk through that, because I am so
Yes, and so
unaware of these definitions?
when they passed the new gun laws, they also changed the definition of handguns, rifles, and shotguns. And our ordinance was just not exactly like the state law definition, so we just changed it to mirror that exactly.
So could you describe what a pistol would be?
Well, a pistol is basically a firearm that discharges one or more projectiles that has a barrel length of 16 inches or less and not an overall length of 27 inches.
Okay.
And that's a pistol as defined by state law.
Yes, and if you pass this, by city ordinance as well.
Okay.
I just want to say, to be very clear, had the state legislature not changed this law, there is no way I would ever vote for this, ever. I just attended a vigil for a toddler who was shot in a drive-by. When I came on to council, I was told by the outgoing police chief that his number one concern was the rise in violent assaults in our city and the easy access to all the guns, from pistol to you name it. So I will do this to keep us in compliance with state law, but this is very problematic, I'll say.
My question, if it's able to be repealed by petition on the state level, will we come back and then revert our ordinance again?
You could. Mm-hmm.
I'll move the item.
And today is just to introduce it for consideration. Of course, the final vote would not occur any earlier than February 4th. So I've got a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance for consideration. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Ordinance is introduced unanimously. Thank you. And now we're at 9J. This is another ordinance introduced, set for public hearing January 21st, final hearing February 4th, regarding vaping.
And this ordinance change is to allow the city to prohibit the smoking and vaping of marijuana products in the same manner that tobacco is prohibited. Now, unusually, I will say that state law did not prohibit the vaping of tobacco, only the vaping of marijuana. I don't know the basis for that distinction, but this nonetheless mirrors what state law allows the city to do.
Can you say that second part again?
So state law allows you to, or it prohibits only the smoking of tobacco, not the vaping of tobacco. But it does prohibit the smoking and vaping of marijuana.
Okay.
Okay. Any further questions?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance for consideration. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously and is introduced. Again, set for public hearing January 21st and final hearing February 4th. 9K1 is a public hearing regarding the dilapidated structures here listed, except for the ones that were previously stricken. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution found at 9K2 declaring that the structures are dilapidated.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9L1 is a public hearing regarding the unsecured structures here listed, except for those that were stricken at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution found at 9L2 declaring that the structures are unsecured.
Move the resolution.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9M1 is a public hearing regarding the abandoned buildings here listed, except for the ones that were stricken at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution found at 9M2 declaring that the buildings are abandoned.
Move the resolution.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9N1 and 2 are related. This is a resolution adopting and confirming the assessment roll for Street Improvement Assessment District number 1626. Perhaps we'll hear a presentation, then return to the public hearing.
Yeah, so this is an issue that we have periodically that it comes up. It doesn't come up frequently enough that we all stay really aware of what this is. And so I just asked Eric just to give us a quick explanation of what we're doing here.
Thank you, City Manager. Eric Winger, Public Works Director. From time to time, we have residences that are on private streets that wish to make those streets public, and so we have an option through the state statute for an assessment district. Thornberry Place is the item that is on your agenda today. It's item 9N1 and 2, and they're in the midpoint of that process of having those streets converted to public streets. So they've been constructed, the work has been done, and so today is the hearing on the assessment of the total cost to those property owners. There's 127 different properties. You'll see those that are attached. The assessment per lot is $3,850 and some change. And so as they pay that assessment over a period of years, this will then lead to bonds being issued that will pay the contractor that actually did the work. So it's a little bit confusing, and I think what I would kind of outline as the process is the assessment district allows contractors that are interested to bid on the project, and the contractor is the one that's actually funding the improvements. When the property taxes are then assessed, those monies are collected and then pay those bonds. The contractor holds those bonds with interest, and so they're actually gaining a benefit of getting the interest from those bonds, and it currently is about 7%. So it's an investment for a contractor that wishes to take the risk for projects like these. But in the end, when the work is done and the assessment is completed, this council then accepts those streets as public streets, which then go into city maintenance, just like other streets in Oklahoma City.
Yes, one thing I was unclear on, the streets currently exist, they're just in bad condition, or?
So what happens is when streets were originally constructed, say in a neighborhood like Thornberry Place, they've deteriorated over time, so the city's not accepting a deteriorated street that's going to require immediate maintenance. When they do a petition and ask that that street be converted to a public street, we actually go out and do inspections. We'll create an engineering set of plans on what the minimal standards are to bring that into a city compliance with our minimums so that we can then accept a street that has a useful life. Most often these streets are requested for for public conversion when they're at their worst condition. So the last thing the city would like to do is accept a street that then it has to go in and provide all the resurfacing and repairs.
The one thing I'd say to the newer members of the council, I go to a homeowners association meeting and people are talking about their condition of their roads. I always mention Title 11, the assessment district, as an alternative to get something done sooner rather than later. And I think this is a wonderful tool. I think it should be used more. The one thing that I always question is for an HOA that doesn't have a lot of funds, the filing fee, roughly at $3,400, I think, is that because of all the work involved, or is that something that maybe the council should look at to lower so that more and more neighborhoods will consider this option?
I would suggest to you that we receive a number of applications, and if there was not an application fee, there's a lot of staff work that goes into in preparing those plans and getting all that work done. In a lot of cases, they find out what the cost is, and then they don't want to proceed. And so we've expended quite a resource and manpower resource to not recover without that fee being in place. So we think it's a reasonable fee, at least to get that initial assessment done. You'll find that Thornberry Place had a 73% positive on their petition. They're not all that close, and so this one I don't think probably had as much question going forward that they wanted to do this, but there are some that just break the 50% mark, sometimes have protests, and sometimes don't move forward. So.
And that's the other great thing about the Title 11 statute is that you only need 51%. You don't have to have a supermajority to get this accomplished.
Right.
So it's a nice tool.
But we'll evaluate that fee and make sure it's reasonable. We definitely are not looking to profit from this. This is really just a recovery of city's cost.
Any other questions for Eric? Okay, thank you. There is a public hearing here, so I would like to offer to the floor if there's anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing regarding this Street Improvement Assessment District number 1626 Thornberry Place addition. Please come forward. Seeing no one, I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution at 9N2 adopting and confirming the assessment role for Street Improvement Assessment District number 1626.
Move the resolution.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we're at 9O, 1 and 2. These items are related. The first is a public hearing, but the second is a joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust to be introduced today and set for final consideration on January 21st. This regards an allotment to the Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center. I think we have a presentation, and then we'll return to the public hearing.
We have a brief presentation this morning. I'd like to introduce Liz Eichmann and James Pickle, who are representing Oklahoma Contemporary this morning. The allocation is for $60,000 for ancillary infrastructure improvements to support their overall project.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Appreciate you all considering our request. Hopefully you're aware that on North Broadway, basically between 11th and 12th Street, Oklahoma Contemporary is committing $30 million total for the construction and the improvement of the surrounding property for the Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center. You will see from the picture, we own 11th Street from the railroad up to Broadway Drive. So all the street improvements for that are our cost. You'll see on 11th Street there's an abandoned alley that's also in yellow that goes to the south. Since it is vacated, we are also paying the cost to improve that. To the bottom of that, you'll see a green L, and those are two alleys that are owned by the city. And we are wanting to improve those alleys. The one that goes straight south will be used as a drive for bus parking, for buses dropping off kids for use Oklahoma Contemporary. And the one that goes off to the right, the green arm, that is the alley that services the back of the building that is sitting, the little rectangle right by the railroad. We have been working with Kathy O'Connor's group, also with people from the city, and what we are proposing, we think the total improvement of those two alleys will be right at $140,000. And as was suggested to us, for a request like this to the city, it's usually most appropriate where we share half of the cost. So we are prepared to pay our half, and we're asking the city for $60,000 maximum to help us make these improvements to these two alleys.
Any questions for James or Liz?
When will we be able to enjoy this wonderful music?
March 10th. So we're kind of in a hurry.
Okay. It appears we are satisfied.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you'll attend the openings.
No doubt. Great. Okay. Well, we will now move on to the public hearing. You may have a seat in case.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing regarding this economic development agreement with the Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to, I guess, introduce the joint resolution found at O2 regarding this project.
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. It is introduced and set for final consideration on January 21st. Thank you. All right, now we are at 9P. This is a resolution amending the current pay plans of the municipal councilor and city auditor by establishing the executive employee pay plan. And I think Kenny Jordan may say a few words briefly.
Yes, I was just going to say a few brief words. This is our proposal and request to improve our pay plan for the deputy municipal councilors and the assistant city auditor. Worked with Jim Williamson on this too. And our goal is to help us to retain the best employees we can get in those particular positions so they won't be looking for employment elsewhere.
Move the item.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9Q is a resolution approving a pay plan with a 1% adjustment over FY 2018-19 rates and continuing certain benefits for positions on the management, administrative, and technical support pay plan, and for positions included on the city auditor's and municipal councilor's pay plans for this fiscal year, and also approving a one-time $200 stipend for said employees. This is retroactive to July 1st, and I believe mirrors what was done with AFSCME at our previous meeting.
Right. It mirrors what was done there, but it does also have some adjustment to municipal councilor and auditor pay plan. Is that correct, Chris? That this is where we make those adjustments? That's correct. I'm sorry. Chris York is our interim HR director, and I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on that it also will make some adjustments to those pay plans has been presented to the council previously.
Right. They're fairly minor. Generally, it duplicates what we did for AFSCME, but there is also, in addition to the 1% that would be applied to city auditor and municipal councilor pay plans, in addition, there's a slight shift on the municipal councilor side where we've moved a couple of their grades that were lagging behind market slightly up. And then we're also reflecting what we call Z-steps. Z-steps had been approved for a number of years and utilized, but they're not. They're a little bit different than our standard 1 through 13 step increases, as they're not automatic. So these Z-steps had been used for a number of years for particular individuals who had long tenure with the city, and then some other criteria that the city auditor or city municipal councilor could set, but they're performance-based. And so we just want to be as transparent as possible and throw those on the pay plan for you to review.
So they're just added steps on the end of the range right now.
Correct, but they're not automatic.
Yes, those were added in a 1985 pay plan that Robert Allen, former municipal councilor, put through the council. So they haven't been reflected on the pay matrix as it came to council, but they've been in the original pay plan of 1985.
And that's both for municipal councilor and for city auditor, so it adjusts that in both of those.
Sir.
Okay. Seeing no more questions, if somebody would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution at 9Q. Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And then at 9R, we have a resolution approving the general non-represented pay plan established for full-time regular employees excluded from coverage by AFSCME. So these are not AFSCME and not management, not FOP and not fire. Right. It's the last group.
Right.
Move the item.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9S1, claims recommended for denial. I don't believe we need executive session. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on any of these claims?
Move the item.
Got a motion and a second to deny the claims. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 10A1, claims recommended for approval. Don't believe we need executive session.
The items.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. This brings us to items from council. Item 11, we'll handle the substantive business first. 11A is a public hearing regarding the ordinance relating to vehicles for hire, specifically advertising on such vehicles. This was presented at the previous meeting and would be voted on potentially at the next meeting, but today is merely the public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this topic? Seeing none. Councilwoman Hammond, anything you wanted to say today? Okay. Moving on to 9B, this is a resolution approving travel and reimbursement of travel-related expenses for Councilwoman Nikki Nice to attend the National League of Cities Waste Management Phoenix Open and Sustainability Forum. And we've got a motion and a second. 6 votes are required. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously, and with the 6 required votes. Now we'll go around the horseshoe. We'll start with Ward 1.
Yes, I would like to thank the detectives and our police chief for their work with a shooting that occurred at a bus stop in Ward 2 at 33rd and Penn on Christmas Day, I believe. Another one of them drive-bys, and in Ward 2. And I just really want to thank those detectives for their work. I also want to thank the kiddos at Sisu Youth. These are homelessness, kids experiencing homelessness, and several of them were at that bus stop that morning when those bullets, went after them. And I really want to thank those kiddos for actually taking time to speak with the police and provide evidence that can help them, because that was it was really brave of them. These are kids who all structures in their life have really fallen away, and especially our LGBT kids who kicked out of their houses often, again, just because someone has a different interpretation of a sacred text in a secular democracy. So I just really want to applaud those kids, and I want to applaud the detectives, and I want to applaud our police chief for working together, because we are stronger together like that. So really thank you so much. I want to thank the folk in Western Village neighborhood for inviting me to attend the vigil for the young 2-year-old who passed away because of gun violence and drive-by, and I would encourage anybody who has any information about that particular shooting to reach out to our police department. And other than that, I would just want to say welcome to 2020, and I would hope that as we go into this new decade, I've been seeing people, and I know I'm going to sound like the party pooper here, but I've been seeing people say stuff like, welcome to the roaring 20s. We should hope not. We should really hope not, because the Depression happened in the 1930s because of the roaring 20s. I know that sounds like a party pooper thing, but there were very specific policies that government enacted that led to the Great Depression. And my great concern is that we would rhyme with history. History doesn't repeat itself, but we find it rhymes. And I really, really worry about that. On a hopeful note, I am very excited that this city has chosen that at the start of this new decade that it's decided to invest in itself, and invest in neighborhoods that have been left behind, to invest in places surrounding Western Village, for instance, where that 2-year-old girl was shot, investing in areas around the 33rd and Penn area where those kids experienced that shooting. So I am very hopeful that this will be a better decade than the ones that have come before. And I just want to say thanks again to the police for doing the work that they're doing.
Yes, I have a few things. I just want to thank, it's a list of organizations, Dream Action, OK, I'm having trouble reading, it's very small, but the American Indian Movement, Black Lives Matter, the Women's March, the Oklahoma City DSA, NAACP, the Oklahoma Call for Reproductive Justice, and Ending Violence Everywhere organizations for hosting a New Year's Day rally outside of the county jail to just bring awareness to all the folks that are incarcerated there and will be incarcerated there throughout the year. Even though, I think our city leadership has done quite a bit, our county leadership has worked to lower the population in the jail. There's obviously a lot more work to be done, and especially, as both Councilman Nice and I have spoken to in the past, the treatment of people who experience menstruation in the jail is really atrocious, and the ability for just dignity while awaiting trial for people who can't afford bail. So I just appreciate those folks for bringing that awareness, and for J.B. Williams was able to join us and perform, and I hope that the folks in the jail were able to hear the support they have from people working for more restorative justice opportunities in our city. I know Councilman Nice is going to speak to a lot of the Martin Luther King Day events, but I just want to give a plug for an event that I've attended every year I've lived here, and I think is a really powerful opportunity to participate in. It's the silent march that happens up on MLK over to the History Center. It happens, I believe, at 9 is sort of the kickoff, and it's just always, for me, been a really great opportunity to see all of the wonderful things happening on the northeast side of the city, and all of the leaders that come out to speak and participate. It's just really inspiring to me. So if anyone is able to make it, I really encourage you to, if you're only doing one thing that day, that's my thing. Parades are awesome, but really loud and noisy. So I'm not always able to do those, but I hope to participate in as much as I can this year. And thank you.
Well, we had a lot of great things that happened in the month of December in our community, and I want to congratulate Frederick Douglass High School. They are the first ever high school in our country to form a National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice chapter. So that speaks to the great things that are happening at Douglass with those young people, and the program that the mentors and the teachers and their advisors are working with them through that process. Also, I want to thank our Parks and Recreation Department. They hosted the Kwanzaa celebration the week of December 26th through January 1st. And that's something that they did not have to do, our Parks and Recreation Department, and I'm grateful that they said yes, and grateful to all of the staff who stayed late to ensure that the doors were open and accommodated all of those who were able to attend. And I want to send an extra happy birthday to Mr. Hamilton. And Mr. Hamilton turned 93 years young on January 2nd. And he's one of those gentlemen, if you ever go to the McDonald's that's on Martin Luther King, that's right across the street from the Riverwind next to Tinseltown, there's a group of folks that hang out literally every morning at this McDonald's. And Mr. Hamilton leads the pack. And he was so happy and excited to see 93 years. And just for the those that are around him to be there and celebrate with him, in my opinion. Obviously, that means a lot. And we had a little birthday party for him at 9 o'clock in the morning with some cake and some coffee. So you can't have coffee without cake in the morning. But I do want to give you a schedule of events that are happening for the Oklahoma City Martin Luther King celebration. As you heard earlier this morning, the parade will take place on 6th and Walker and proceeding down Walker to Reno. And the theme this year is 40 Years Better Together. And there's a couple of things happening Friday. The reason I'm bringing and mentioning all of these things today is because our next council meeting will be the day after. So Friday, January 17th, at the Embassy Suites Hotel, there's a Marcella Guthrie Scholarship Fund. They're having their 26th annual Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Banquet. On January 18th, on that Saturday, the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated Beta Eta Lambda Chapter, they're going to have their 26th annual Gospel Extravaganza, and that's going to be 6 p.m. at Tabernacle Baptist Church, and it's free admission. Black Incorporated, they will be having a spoken word. The theme is Community or Chaos, Are We There Yet? And that is actually the name of the titled book, one of his last books from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So that starts at 7, and young people are going to be given an opportunity to voice their concerns, thoughts about the work of Dr. King, his legacy, and how it has impacted them in their lives and their thoughts. And on Sunday, January 19th, I'm pretty sure the mayor will be joining in this. It's the annual Mlk Celebration. It's going to be at the St. John Baptist Church, 5700 North Kelly. And that evening at 6 p.m., the cross-cultural program will be at the Temple B'nai Israel Church, 4900 block on North Penn. And then on that Monday, we do have the prayer breakfast that's held at the Reed Conference Center. It starts at 7 a.m., and as you may or may not know, there will be a job fair that starts at 9 on that same day. It's sponsored by TFCU. And the opening program is at the Freedom Center at 9 a.m. 9:45 is the silent march that you heard Councilwoman Hammond talking about. 11 a.m. is the bell ringing ceremony, and that's going to be at the Oklahoma History Center. 12:10 is going to be the annual program at St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and that's located at Northwest 7th and Robinson, and they're going to have a panel discussion this year. And then at 2, the parade will begin. So there's going to be many places to view the parade along that route, and I just ask that we all remember and commemorate the legacy of Dr. King, who during his lifetime came to Oklahoma City not once, but twice, because of the important things that were happening here. And one of the main reasons is because those things were spearheaded by the late Clara Luper and the children and the movement that was happening here in Oklahoma City. And the first was because he was being courted, should I say, to be the pastor of Calvary Baptist Church when he was told he was too young. So as we know, he went on to do some other and better and greater things to our and for our city, our state, and our nation, and our world. So with that, we will see you for MLK next weekend.
All right, that concludes items from council. This brings us to item 12, city manager reports.
Yes, we have a couple of presentations this morning. The first one is a presentation on the council priority on upholding high standards for all city services. And we actually have, it's one presentation, but Chris Browning, Eric Winger, and Christy Yeager will be making different portions of the presentation, just talking about different parts of our city service and addressing some of the measures that have been included to show progress in addressing this priority.
Good morning again. Chris Browning, Utilities. The purpose of this City Council priority is to maintain high standards and service delivery to our residents, as seen by our commitment to provide quality customer service and continuing to achieve and exceed the expectations of City Council. The Utilities Department is committed to providing water, wastewater, and trash collection services throughout central Oklahoma to safeguard public health and the environment, support public safety, and enable economic prosperity. So today, this morning, I'd like to talk about 5 areas: customer service, water, wastewater, solid waste management, and then finally our citizen survey. So in customer service, our LFR measure is answering calls within 30 seconds. We think it's very, very important for us to get to the call so that we can go ahead and take care of that customer as quickly as possible. Nobody likes to wait on the phone and listen to music or whatever for an extended period of time. So our goal is to answer that call within 30 seconds. We had a slight decrease in our ability to do that in FY19 for a couple of reasons. First of all, we get about 500,000 calls a year into our call center, and we're continually upgrading our technology so that we can serve our customers better. In 2018, we felt that the target of doing our 30-second goal at 80% was just too low. So we increased it to 90%. We did a few things in the call center to help us achieve that 90%, but then this year we had to do some training for our SAP and billing system and also for our customer portal. So we didn't have as many customer service reps available to take those calls. They were in training so that they could provide additional services to our customers. The other thing we did is we restructured the call center as well, where we get calls that come in that are pretty routine, when's my trash day, so on and so forth. And so we like to answer those calls as quickly as possible, get the folks off the phone as quickly as possible so that we can get to the next call. Some of the calls, however, are much more complicated. Why is my bill so high? So we've set up a process where we can escalate those calls to somebody who can take more time with that customer to explain what's going on. They've been here longer, they've gone through a little bit more training, and also if we move those calls to an escalated area in our call center, then that customer service rep can get to that next call quicker. So we did that. So in order to do that, we had to do a little bit more training this year, so our ability to manage those calls within that 30-second time frame went down just slightly this year, but we expect it to go up over the next year because of those changes. Next slide. So in water, it's very important that we respond to emergencies as quickly as possible. If you look at FY15 through 17, we had a metric that didn't really make sense. That metric was that we were going to fix whatever happened, a leak or a break or whatever, within some period of time, 70% of the time. So 70% of the time we were going to fix a water main break or fix a leak within 72 hours. That just doesn't make sense. It's not a good metric. What we want to know is how quickly are we responding to emergencies? And the response to emergencies is more important because that enables us to get that service reinstated as quickly as possible. So we made a new measure in FY18 to say, okay, we're going to respond to those water emergencies within 1 hour. And we're going to do it 95% of the time. Well, as you can see from the graph, we're doing that. We've exceeded that measure, and so that helps us restore service quicker and lose less water. So those are two very important things. So you can see that we're doing pretty well there. The way we were able to do that is we kind of restructured our organization, and we're outsourcing our non-core business responsibilities like landscaping and repairing sidewalks and curbs and those kinds of things. So now we have highly trained people, those folks who are good at fixing pipes, good at fixing leaks, available to respond quicker. And you can see the result here where we're about 97% this year. 97% of the time we were there within 1 hour. Go ahead. So on the wastewater side, again, it's just as important that we respond within 1 hour. We don't want backups into buildings or homes. We don't want overflowing sewage. We want to make sure that we get there and we start mitigation as quickly as possible. So our goal is to get there within 1 hour, 95% of the time. We increased the goal from 90% of the time within 2 hours. We just didn't think that was good enough. So we changed that to 95% of the time we're going to be there within 1 hour. We're not quite there yet. We've reorganized our work processes. We're now, instead of being geographically located or assigned work within the city, we're task-based. So we have people specifically trained to do certain things, readily available to respond to these emergencies quicker. And so we believe that with these enhancements in the way we do business, and we also outsource some of their non-core business work as well, that we can get to that 95% goal pretty quickly, and you can see that we've done a little better this year than last year. So in solid waste management, it's very important for us to pick up the trash and get out of the neighborhoods before 5 o'clock. People don't want to go home and find their cans still full of trash. They want to be able to roll it up to the house when they get home. So our goal is to be out of those neighborhoods by 5 o'clock. And as you can see, our goal is 95% of the time, and that's not just for us. That's for our contractor waste management as well. We track both. So we are doing quite well. We dropped 1 point this year. Instead of 100% of the time, we're at 99%. And that's because, if you remember, we changed our recycle, where now we're doing the large green cart. And so July, when we transitioned over, we had a lot of recycle stuff to pick up. And that transition period caused us to be at 93%. So we dropped 1 point because of that 1 month. But then we went right back up to our normal, out of the neighborhoods very quickly, a high percentage of the time. So we've done quite well there this year. And because of that transition and that one anomaly, that 1 month that cost us to drop 1 point, we don't believe this is going to be a problem going forward. And then finally, the customer survey. Our customers think we're doing pretty well. If you look at this, in every single category, we're above the national average. So overall, this is utilities. We have exceeded the national average in every category by 18%. And compared to large cities, we've exceeded every category by 22% on average. Now, the highest rated service in the city is our trash collection service. It rated a 91% customer satisfaction this year. And this is not the first time. This seems to be a recurring thing for our solid waste management folks. So they're really proud of that, and we expect them to continue on. And so we're really proud of the fact that we're exceeding the national average, but we're not done. We have a quality program that we've kicked off this past year that we will continue to evaluate what we do, how we do it, why do we do it, and continue to try to get better and better each year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks for the great news on the customer satisfaction. I am so proud of what you all are doing. Great work, especially in the area of emergency response. I want to thank you. I want to thank your staff. I want to thank your employees. If there's anything we can do to help, let us know.
Thanks, sir. We have a great staff. They do a great job. They're very dedicated and very committed.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I spent Christmas, a Christmas party with some of the solid waste department, and they were very appreciative of what they do, and I appreciate them and you all for the tremendous job, and obviously the numbers speak for the employee and the staff. And I also, I forgot to mention this, I met a father and a son who work in the same department.
Yes, ma'am.
And that obviously speaks to the great things that happen with our city staff. So for his dad to say, son, come on in, and now his son doing the same thing that he's doing.
Thank you.
So next up, we have
Thank you very much.
making presentation on public works measures related to upholding high standards for city services.
Thank you, City Manager. So as Chris mentioned, we also look very closely at the resident survey for metrics that are related to public works, and something that as a public works director that you'd like to be number one. This is something we don't want to be number one at, which is the condition of our city streets being our citizens' number one concern. So it's proud to be number one, but not of this, right? So we focus on the condition of streets, and I think you understand that we've got a number of programs that are working very diligently with either the 2017 bond, with either Better Streets, Safer City. We're launching out there to improve streets as quickly as we can. But one of the things that we track very closely with our Leading for Results measures and our strategic business planning is how responsive we are to the repair of potholes. And so what you see here is a 5-year average of the number of potholes repaired across the city. We frequently have gone out there and we have seen averages around 80,000 potholes a year. You'll see that that fluctuates somewhat on this graph. It's really related to the amount of rainfall we receive. So the years that we receive higher rains, we see higher numbers of potholes. I would tell you that if we went back a few more years into 2013, where we had a lot of record rains, we actually experienced over 100,000 potholes that year. So the numbers have fluctuated. We're slightly down. I would say we're trending downward. And I think one of the reasons that we're starting to see that is we're fixing some of the city's worst streets with either Better Streets, Safer City, the bond, or the sales tax programs. We simply are having fewer potholes on some of those on some of those arterials and some of those residentials. So as a priority indicator, percent of potholes repaired within 3 days is something that we've used for a number of years. We obviously want to be very responsive to when a call is placed to the action center as to how quickly we get out and respond. But our performance has been difficult, and there's a number of things that I'll kind of outline in just a few minutes as to some of the challenges that we've had. This is the percentage over the last 5 years as well. So the target again being 80%. Our best year was in fiscal year 17. You'll see we were approaching that 80%. But you're going to see last year in 2019 was absolutely one of our worst years, with only a 36% repairing a pothole within 3 days. Using the strategic business planning, we dug into this deep to find that there were a number of things that were starting to occur. We're having difficulty filling a lot of key positions in public works, specifically in our crew worker, in some of our CDL drivers. We have 13 pothole units that are capable of going out every day, but it's rare that we get all 13 on the street every day, either due to a lack of complete crew availability, maybe a sick call in. It could be a number of things. And so we're starting to develop new strategies on how we can be more responsive and bring these numbers up. So we've started a different methodology on how we're managing potholes. We're doing a quadrant-based management system that's helping us strategically get those potholes that are turned in more quickly responded to. And so you're seeing now in fiscal year 20 our numbers climbing, but it's not near the 80% that is our target. If we go to the next slide, we actually broke this down by the month. So when we started in July and August, we were in the 20% range, but we've climbed to nearly 50% with some of those changes already being made. We will not make 80% by the end of the year, but we will definitely be above 50% and possibly approaching as much as 60% here in just the next few short months. Some of the other changes that we've made, we've worked with internal measures and staffing on how we handle action center calls. So most of the potholes that are reported do come through the action center. When they hit the action center, that doesn't immediately create a work order for our crew workers to know that that request has come in. So there is a transfer of information where it leaves the action center system and goes into a city work order system that the crews actually are able to go out into the field and do the activity. We've expedited the way that we're able to get that information into the work order system, so we're seeing these immediate results. Something that you can expect to see here by the end of this calendar year is we're going to an electronic work order system. We still work very much in a paper world in public works, but by the end of the year we're looking to be completely electronic so that that information is seamlessly going between the different systems. So we're not finished. We're still focused on that 80% goal. So as we make this report here in future months or in the next year, I expect to see dramatic improvement. We also have made a couple of changes. We know that our arterial streets have a higher priority than our residential. Not that the residentials are not important, but we definitely want to put more attention and focus on arterials that have the higher traffic. So we are making a strategic business plan change today where arterial and high traffic roads will have a 3-day priority, and then we're going to move slightly lower to a 5-day priority in residential, not to not make those repairs, but just to make sure that we're making those repairs on the highest traffic streets first. We'll be tracking that, so you'll see on our next update in the future, we'll have a separate measure for residential and a separate measure for arterial streets. And then continued performance improvements. Like I mentioned, the electronic work order system and the ability to get information from the Action Center into our crew system more quickly. We have also created some additional controls, which we call our new response manager. It's helping us improve on our staff accountability, making sure that we're actually meeting those metrics. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we're just generally expecting to see fewer potholes in Oklahoma City as we continue to improve our streets and bringing those very low payment condition indexes up and not having to have as many work orders in some repeat areas. So with that, I can answer any questions that you have, but obviously there is a goal in Public Works to not be number one. I'm not sure what year that will occur, but as we continue to implement Better Streets, Safer City, we would hope that we would address the citizens' number one need of the condition of city streets. We'll be measuring that through pothole performance, but then also additional reports to council on pavement in the future.
I know when I first went on the council, we had a separate phone number for potholes that people could call in, and at some point we switched that Action Center. Something time that we may want to rethink that and look and see if we want a separate number again. Would that help improve response time?
We think with the new opportunities that PIM has been able to offer through the Action Center, where you have the ability not just the phone, but also a smartphone, being able to do that where they're helping us GPS locate those potholes, that's actually a more efficient system.
And I think also having a single number that you know if you've got an issue with the city, you have one number you call is very helpful too, trying to consolidate that.
I will say this, though. When I went to HOA meetings, I always gave out the pothole number. That was the most written down number there was. And people used it.
Right.
One of the changes we have made is when you submit a pothole to Oklahoma City, you're going to receive a response. It's going to give you a reference number that it's been received, but you're also going to get a phone number that's not the Action Center's phone number on that response. It's 297-2079, with the goal that you will be able to call if you have a question about the pothole that you just reported, that you can talk to a person immediately to get real data. When will it be fixed? How will it be fixed? Maybe if it wasn't fixed satisfactorily, without having to submit another item to the Action Center, you can simply call Public Works staff at that number and we'll have somebody answer the phone there.
On pothole responses, have you thought of incentivizing the teams to, like, making it a game, competition?
So we've talked about that, not as much of an incentive or a game, but at least giving the crews more information. So obviously if you're on a pothole crew today, you receive a number of work orders with the goal of finish as many of these today as you can. But I don't know that they know how many potholes are waiting for them tomorrow or next week. One of the things that we have an opportunity for with a lot of the data integration, and we're starting to do this in management teams too, but display boards in our crew room that show like total calls, total potholes, total repaired today, total expected tomorrow. But we're working on those types of things in our crew rooms so that they're also getting that data and so they can get those small rewards for having finished all the potholes that were needed, or as we work through some of the severe, like say spring, when we get hundreds and hundreds of requests a day, how to tackle that too. So yes, there's an incentive or information type program that we're working on. It's not in place, but something that we're planning this spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So next we have Christy Yeager, our Public Information and Marketing Director, to wrap this up and talk about some of our measures we have.
I'm going to talk about 3 different measures: the percent of service requests received through the Action Center and acted upon within 10 working days, the quality of customer service you receive from employees, and the quality of service provided by the city. I'm going to start with the Action Center. The Action Center is actually located here in City Hall on the 2nd floor, and we have 3 employees in the Action Center. We have Beth Krauntz, who's back there. She's the supervisor, and she handles a lot of the more difficult cases that we get in within the Action Center. If there's not an easy answer, then Beth has to unravel those problems. Right now, we have 2 other full-time employees. We are going to be hiring another employee who is fluent in Spanish so that they could help us with communicating to our Spanish-speaking residents and doing a lot of outreach and education in addition to answering phones. So we're excited about that opportunity. The Action Center was created as the single source of contact for our residents. So if you Councilman Stonecipher, if it makes you feel better to say the pothole hotline is 297-2535, you can do that. No problem. We're all about that. Accessibility is important to us, so you can actually contact the Action Center in 11 different ways that we've been able to count. One is through 297-2535 by calling the number. That's the number one way people call or contact us. The second is they could text us. They can go to okc.gov/action. They can email us. They can go through our app. They can go through Twitter. They can go through Nextdoor. They can go through Facebook. They can go to a meeting. They can walk into the Action Center. We even get people that still fax us. Yes, and write letters. So we take them however they come in. We'll take concerns from the public. And so, like I said, most of our concerns are submitted through our phone number, 2535, or through okc.gov. The Action Center staff had more than 100,000 interactions in the last fiscal year, and over 70% of those contacts were requests for services. So the other 30% were people who had questions that we referred to other agencies. They were people that just wanted some information about the city, and we were able to get on and off the phone with them. And it was access to people through neighborhood associations and our code enforcement workshop. This is always interesting, but I'll have to say it hasn't changed in 20 years. This is the number of service requests and the most popular service requests that we get. And by far, year after year after year, for 20 years, as long as I've been here, the number one service request, and probably since the beginning of time, is high grass and weeds. And last year we took about 15,000, well, over 15,000 of those. Number two was potholes, much less, at 6,000, then junk and debris, and yard parking. So those are the top four for last fiscal year. Really hasn't changed much over time. But it is interesting to see. Providing a timely, meaningful response is important for the city's credibility. So the Action Center monitors how quickly service requests are responded to by departments. As you can see, over the last 3 years, the majority of service requests were responded to in a timely manner. Last year, city departments, and this is primarily development services, public works, and parks, acted upon 93% of their service requests within 10 days. That's slightly below the year target of 96%. We're working on strategies now to drive more residents to report issues to the Action Center rather than contacting individuals or individual departments. This will help us more accurately track response time and communicate our progress back to our residents. All right. Now, let's look at the satisfaction level residents reported related to the quality of services they were provided by city employees. This data was collected from the 2019 Resident Satisfaction Survey. 64% of people who responded to the survey reported they were satisfied or satisfied with the service they received from us. This is 22% higher than the average satisfaction level reported in other large U.S. cities and 18% higher than reported in all other cities that ETC surveys. So we did pretty good there. And the last slide is the quality of customer service our residents received from city employees. This was a question, also a question on the 2019 resident survey. 59% of people who responded to the survey report they were satisfied or very satisfied with the service they received from us. As you can see, we outperformed other cities in this category. Right now, the Personnel Department just launched a new program, and it's led by Bridget Hewlett, and she's going to be doing some employee training. She's offered a customer service class that's been a huge hit, from what I understand from employees, about customer service. And I expect if we can continue that program and maybe even offer it out to the field employees, that we can improve on all of our quality, our customer service data, and we can do better and provide better customer service to everyone. So that ends my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
All right, thank you, Christy. The next presentation we have is on the Bike Walk OKC implementation. We talked about doing some update on this, and so Jeff Butler and Eric Winger will be making a presentation just to give us an update on where we are with the plan.
Good morning, Jeff Butler, Planning Director. Just wanted to give you a brief update, as Mr. City Manager said, on on-street bike facilities, our implementation status, and I'll start us off with an introduction and some information and then turn it over to Mr. Winger. So first of all, we wanted to just give you a little bit of a kind of a recap on Bike Walk OKC and some background for our system. So it is a tiered system. Bike Walk OKC calls for these on-street facilities to be a tiered system. So what you see here in this picture on the front of the plan itself would be a Tier 2. It's a common bike lane. Bike Walk OKC, and I'll get more into that in a little bit. Bike Walk OKC identifies and prioritizes projects, and it looks at best practices for implementation and design, and not only that, but analysis that was done and should be done to prioritize, and to identify where facilities should go, how the network should interconnect, and how things should be prioritized in the future. And then finally we have, just as the plan was becoming finalized and adopted, it was good timing because Better Streets, Safer City came along, and we were able to go ahead and start implementation immediately with several $1 million. In addition, of course, we have MAPS 4 now, which has been passed, and there are a lot of potential MAPS 4 projects in the plan. The plan goals are to make walking and cycling safe in Oklahoma City, to have make it the system such that people will feel safe and they'll enjoy riding, and we can have greater numbers of people walking and cycling in the city for transportation as well as recreation, and also to have better connectivity from neighborhoods to workplaces or what have you. Their destinations, and then finally that we remove barriers, whether those be safety barriers or physical barriers, you can't cross the street or something like that. Those are the main goals. Back to the tiered system I mentioned earlier, this is really important. It goes, it applies to every facility that we do. So the Tier 3, we'll start at Tier 3 on the left-hand side of this image you see here, and that's a shared lane marking. So those would be on facilities or roads where you have low speeds and low traffic volume, so residential areas or some connector streets where it's a pretty comfortable ride, and a lot of times, I may have been expressed in this meeting and other meetings as well with our Better Streets, Safer City committee. A lot of that is just kind of for wayfinding to help cyclists kind of get their way around and get from a Tier 2 facility to a Tier 1, get to their kind of final destination. Tier 2 would be a bike lane, or in some cases a buffered bike lane with a fairly narrow buffer. Tier 1 is, there are a lot of options in Tier 1 as you see there, but it's the most protection that's available. So this would be on streets where you have some combination of higher traffic volumes and or you might have higher speeds, but there still would be a demand for a bicycle facility. So you could have a buffer with delineators, in some cases a really wide buffer that acts as that we would consider a Tier 1 with relatively few delineators. And then in some cases we might have a raised facility where it's kind of behind the curb or behind some planters. So there are lots of different options, and they range from the least expensive on your left to the most expensive on the right. And our goal is to kind of optimize the system so that we are smart with our resources. We get a good system that is also, we also get a good network out of it. So we're always very cognizant of how much these things are costing so that we can get a good system, but also one that is spread throughout the city. This is just a map from Bike Walk OKC that shows, that focuses on the urban core. There are other maps that cover all areas of the city, and this just shows you all the proposed network. So the tiers 1, 2, and 3 are the different colors. And there's also trails that are indicated on there. And you can see that the goal is to have a pretty good network. Not every street in the city will have a bike facility, but the goal is to eventually have a good network so that you're never very far from a designated bike facility. So quickly, the funding allocations, sales taxes, the bulk of the funding for these facilities comes from the Better Streets, Safer City sales tax, which was $12 million. Several bond projects had, these came in the street enhancement portion of the bond. A lot of those were heavily dedicated towards bike facilities or had bike facilities in them. So that shows up here as a pretty good amount. $6 million or so. And then finally, we were always looking for opportunities to get grant funds to supplement and maximize those the bike facilities. Implementation, so we fast forwarded on this slide to the point where we are ready to implement a project, and what Public Works typically does sometimes, and Eric can go into a little more detail on this, but they'll have some in-house some projects that are done by in-house consultants. A lot of times, though, it is contracted outside, and the consulting firms will bid on it. They'll be selected, and then planning and Public Works will then coordinate on the design of the project. And we, of course, always engage stakeholders and the public, and depending on the project and the intensity will depend on, and the impact to potential stakeholders and the public will have some kind of variation in the level of stakeholder engagement. And then finally, it proceeds to construction, and Public Works oversees that. And then I will say that after that, it's not done. We're continually monitoring and trying to get better. So especially because we're new to this as a city, and so it's our intent to, as time goes on, we're going to continue to evaluate how these different projects are working, what we could do better for maintenance, but also design of future projects. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Winger for discussion of the bicycle standards and some other projects.
Thank you, Jeff. So I think one of the things is planning and Public Works work together. I mean, it's a collaborative effort for us to be able to take Bike Walk, which was a plan and an idea, and actually start to put it into the City of Oklahoma City infrastructure. We've already found a number of challenges. So as Jeff mentioned, we have a number of different consultants that are working, and it seemed as though we were getting more questions than we had answers. So over the past several months, if not for the past year, we started working on bicycle design standards just like we would have a street construction standard or a water line construction standard. We had to start developing a standard so that as we engaged either internal or external staffing, they knew what we needed, the width of a bike lane, what color of paint it needed to be, how wide the stripe, how close you place the delineators. We started to have to develop the cost so that we could budget appropriately for these. And so the bike design standards have been in development since last summer, and I'm happy to report that we're very near completion of being able to have these to where these can go out not just on city projects, but then other private development projects that also possibly have a bike lane identified in Bike Walk as we implement this citywide. But again, it's just like every other item in construction. We've got to make sure that it works within our right-of-way, that it meets all the requirements for, say, if you have it next to a driveway, or it's next to a bus stop, or it's next to a driving lane, what all those different details look like. So you actually see here on some of those sheets the level of detail that we're having to go into for the consultants just to make sure that we construct these correctly and consistently throughout Oklahoma City. One of the stakeholder outreach opportunities that we had, we actually engaged the Better Streets, Safer City Advisory Board last summer in this conversation and held a workshop. We've just finished the second workshop with them yesterday where we were actually laying out these standards just to get their input. And we have several bicyclists, including Chairman Hal McKnight, that's on the committee. So we're getting a lot of valuable input from those that are actually on the road. And so with that, they're helping guide a lot of different questions, helping us with some of the answers. And so we've incorporated that. We've received those final comments yesterday, so I feel as though we're going to be able to publish these standards here in just the next few weeks. When you start looking at the facility types, this has been a big question, and so as we go into the community with the Bike Walk OKC plan, our goal is to always provide a Tier 1, which is that highest level of bicycle standard that's available, but it's not always going to work. And we do find that in some cases we have to drop down a tier, either because there's not enough space, there's some sort of an infield conflict or something like that. That's what you're seeing here. So on the facility tiers on this right-hand side, you're going to see again a Tier 1 typically has a level of protection. It either has a buffer zone or it has a delineator. Tier 2 is much what you see here in downtown Oklahoma City with a lot of the Project 180 bike lanes. You'll see a dedicated lane with a green bike box. And then Tier 3 typically is that shared type lane. This is just a more infield example of the shared lane. I would tell you that the goal for the Tier 3 is to connect Tier 2s and Tier 1s together. So it is legal for a bicyclist to ride on any street in Oklahoma City without this pavement marking being in the street. They don't need to know that every street can be ridden. But what this is going to help us with Bike Walk OKC is, for example, if you're on Sheridan Avenue crossing downtown and you're in a protected lane, or at least a Tier 2 lane west of Walker, it has to temporarily, in front of the Muir Botanical Gardens, go to a Tier 3, a shared lane, because there's not enough space between the curb lines to then get you then to the protected bike lane just east of Robinson. So we would use those sharrows to make sure that you know as a bicyclist that as you're leaving one bike lane and getting to the next, this is the direction you go to make that connection. This is the Tier 2 again, and this is what's probably the most common that we have in Oklahoma City now. It is a dedicated lane, and we're having to really look at with these bicycle standards, making sure that the pavement conditions are adequate for bicyclists, making sure that we're not creating road obstructions like with inlets, hazards that might be in next to that curb. So we're working diligently on those. And then this is an example of a Tier 1 that has a buffer and delineators. So the example I will show here in just a minute, the project that we're nearing completion on Walker Avenue has many examples of Tier 1. Tier 1 can come in other forms too. This would be like behind the curb, so if it's more in a multi-purpose trail format, we're going to have some opportunities for some trail behind curb or some multi-purpose that are along the Oklahoma City Boulevard. And then we have some that we would strive for possibly in the future where you actually have a complete barrier. These obviously take the most right-of-way, and also if we're requiring right-of-way, it's the most expensive. So this would be the highest cost type bicycle infrastructure that we could possibly construct. There are some others that we have just pulled from examples, and this is really just to show that we're looking at all opportunities as we move forward in Oklahoma City. This is another trail behind curb using kind of an amenity or a buffer zone. But as I lead to the project example of Walker Avenue, one of the goals that we have with so much resurfacing is if we resurface a street that's also identified on the bike walk plan, before we restripe that street, if it was to receive bicycle lanes as a part of bike walk, why not do it then when you restripe the street? And so in the case of Walker Avenue, we're able to evaluate that as a lower than anticipated traffic volume street. It had less than 10,000 cars a day between downtown and Southwest 36th Street, Grand Boulevard, to where we were able to actually reduce a lane, create bicycle lanes, but still provide for all the necessary vehicular traffic at the same time. So what you're seeing is this plan sheet, as we're leaving the downtown area, you're seeing the new dedicated lanes, which are already existing on Walker Avenue, north of Reno as a part of Project 180. When this project is completed in the next month or so, it will actually have dedicated lanes, not just from downtown ending at Reno, but going all the way to the Grand River Trail on Southwest 36th. So you see the green bike boxes, you're seeing the restriping plans that are here. As we move down through different intersections, and I know that these get a lot more difficult to read, but trying to put so much plan on a sheet, one of the biggest challenges that we had in Walker Avenue is a lot of the commercial businesses, the bus stops, the driveways, but plans were developed to address each of those using those bicycle standards. And so we have today, if you were to drive Walker Avenue south, you'll see all of these paint markings actually in place today. We do not have all the delineators installed. We do have 2 areas that are incomplete. We just recently finished the resurfacing and the bridge repair over the river, which you see here. That has not been 100% striped. There are also 2 areas near the Oklahoma City Boulevard that ODOT has not 100% completed, and so those will be striped out as well here very shortly. ODOT has reported that they expect to finish the Boulevard project by the end of February, so we're hoping that that is the time frame that we can maintain for this project as well. But as I encourage you, we look at projects like Walker Avenue as that example that's using those standards. There's nearly 20 additional projects that Planning and Public Works are working on now that are looking to be implemented as a part of Bike Walk in the coming year. Many of these are already on the Better Street, Safer City plan sets that we're starting to get the details for. The next one that is similar to Walker that's being worked on is Main Street, which is going to connect Main Street, General Pershing Avenue to the Grand River Trail near the fairgrounds, also connecting to downtown. So as we talk about connectivity, we're not looking just for having bike lanes on streets for 2 or 3 blocks, but looking at several miles at a time, making those connections to other trail systems so we have a fully integrated network. This slide just shows a list of all the different projects that are underway in different wards. But again, as we find additional resources and as we launch Bike Walk even further forward, we'll be looking for those additional opportunities in all areas of the city. This is just a map of the locations that we're currently working. The blue is the 2017 bond projects. The green is the Better Street, Safer City sales tax projects. And then Jeff also mentioned we have some grant funds that we're also working on. But again, you're starting to see that network, and we could overlay this drawing in Bike Walk, and you'd see that we're starting to get a lot of those overlaps now and making those point A to point B connections. With that, Jeff and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about bike implementation in Oklahoma City.
All right, thank you. So the only other thing we have on city manager reports is claims and payroll. You can get that at okc.gov, and that's all that I have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We have some citizens who have signed up to speak. Joy Reardon. Actually, Joy, why don't you go second, and while you prepare, we'll have Ronnie Kirk come up.
My name is Ronnie Kirk. Live at 2328 North Missouri here in Oklahoma City. Mr. Mayor, I gave you the same book that I gave my Ward 7 council person. And the Black History Museum have a copy of it. 1148 AM radio station, Roth Perry has a copy. I've been in business 50 years, September the 29th. You know, one thing I do know is when alcohol affects a person a different way. Pills affect them a different way. Marijuana affects them a different way. You know, the city has grown so much, and we've come so far ahead, now we're giving them guns with no background check. You know, when a person's on PCP and they got a gun, or when they're drunk and they got a gun, or when they already have a bad attitude and they got a gun, they think they're invincible when they have a gun with them. Invincible. And that's even before you pass the guns with no background check. But now everybody can get a gun, and the police don't have to guess if you got a gun. They assume everybody got one. So we know we're getting ready to open up Thunder Alley. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be nice for the whole state, nice for the city. You know, it took one event to have it closed down. Kids got in a fight up there, pulled out a gun 4 years ago, and shut it down the first night. So, you know, I come in here 6 months ago and I say, before Mary Fallon went out of office, I came in that Tuesday, and I spoke opening up Pandora's box and people would be shooting with no guns, and I told my wife, I know she's not going to vote that in, because she had after 12 midnight to vote it in. 12 midnight comes, she said no. 2 weeks after, Governor Stitt came in. He voted it right in to give everybody a gun with no background check. It's not too late to close Pandora's box. We don't need to open it up and keep it open. You know, I told y'all a speaker fellow where they were having a baseball game. People thought it was a gun went off. They stampeded, run over kids and everything. And we had the same thing here happen at Penn Square Mall. They got in there fighting over some shoes and shot a gun inside the mall. We know they ain't supposed to have no gun in there, but they're going to take one in there. So let's close this box. It ain't too late to close it. You know, we care so much about the city and taking it forward.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
You too. Joy Reardon. Hello.
I've got two major issues and then two issues that can probably wait. Do you know what we're going to be celebrating this year? One major event. 30 years. 30 years ago, President Ronald Reagan signed the act of the ADA law. Do you know Oklahoma City is one of the worst, next to Dallas, Texas, which I went to the convention down there, as far as ADA compliance? Can anyone answer why we're still 20 years behind times on ADA? And I'll be going to the council member tomorrow. Why we're 20 years behind times on ADA? Anybody? Nobody? 20 years. We'll be celebrating 30 years of ADA law, and nobody can answer that question. And the times that I come up here, I ask the same question, and nobody can give me an answer. The other major issue is these scooters. I backed off on them, but now it's getting worse. Why has the city council made some ordinance? Because it's getting worse, not better with these scooters. Any answers? I have been almost hit 37 times going down to Bricktown. 37 different instances that somebody's tried to run me over with them stupid scooters. My understanding, if you read on there, you're supposed to be over the age of 18 and with a driver's license. So that right there gives the city police, because if you got to have a driver's license for it, it's classified as a motor vehicle. So they can write tickets for violation of a motor vehicle act. And I'm frankly getting tired of it. Every time I call Lime about an incident, they blow me off. It's time to start getting tough on them. Other cities have cracked down on it. More and more cities are seeing that it's not worth the injuries. What is it going to take? Someone dying? Someone getting run over by vehicles for y'all to act?
I guess my question is, because I don't think it's the person's liability, right? So we can't hold the company liable because that person is agreeing to something. But if someone is underage, is that something that, like, if we alerted police, I saw someone who was obviously
right.
10.
If the police was alerted to it, or if they observe it and they see that, they can act upon it.
Write a
Right. They can do
ticket,
something about it. Yep.
It isn't that hard. Any given day, 24 hours a day, any given day, you've got a station in Bricktown. The police told me straight up, they can't write tickets. They simply cannot do it. Because the Horseshoe hasn't given them rules and regulations and stuff so they can. I see parents with children on the scooters.
Joy, you're over 4 minutes and even deducting the exchange.
But that was my two biggest things is the AD law, let's try to bring it up to where at least we're 10 years behind times, and the scooters. Just try to do something with the scooters, please.
Okay, thank you.
Because the next time someone hits me, I'm going to hit them back.
Okay, thank you. Michael Washington?
Well, illustrious, esteemed panel here, 2900 Northeast 18th Street. Leonard Benton is a has-been. Not quite gone yet, but never marked Michael Washington's greatness when it comes to his own lawful ability to use the law to his best interest. Give me a couple of months and we can say, hasta la vista, baby, to Leonard Benton and his crew regarding our Freedom Center. Freedom Center stays with the Northeast side. Now then, I'm here to talk about very briefly. I know I don't have much time, so let me condense it in my best mode possible here. I'm told that the city, through some kind of capacity, is getting ready to help finance the Restore OKC, who suddenly moved on the northeast side of Oklahoma City, regarding the farming process. However, it seems to me that there's a discriminatory process going on here because Dr. Tammy Steele, who is running the National Women in Ag building on 1701 North Martin Luther King, has been totally overlooked, totally disregarded, and virtually seen to be non-existent. Well, everybody, again, that's about to change because there'll be no discriminatory allocation of funds earmarked for any organization that's discriminatory and negligently, deliberately, and flagrantly disregarding another when we know that money is allocated on the northeast side for projects, for farming, or whatever the case may be, should be equally distributed toward everyone. And that's why Michael Washington is here standing in today to represent this point and bring it home to y'all. Now then, the selective process is if I agree with you, I'm your friend, you get something, we'll end today. This matter was brought to my attention, and being a real community activist, being a real political activist, I will bring it to the attention of everyone that if monies are allocated discriminatorily, and this lady, Dr. Tammy Steele, who has done so much, a tremendously great job for African-American community for the past 12 years, if she's not given monies earmarked toward her adventurous farming industry that we know is designed to create a farming industry that's designed to produce great produce, greens, onions, tomatoes, or whatever the case may be, there's going to be a real problem in the courts. Did everybody hear that? Not necessarily targeting you, but I'm telling you this here. We would not be allowing anyone from the outside to come in to take over a farming industry where a lady has been there 12 years in a main part of Oklahoma City in Martin Luther King in a very beautiful spot. When you drive by, you can't help but, what's going on there? Right now, it doesn't look like it's supposed to be. It's like the Freedom Center. But we're hoping that we can convince the city. Oh, she's going to start coming because I'm going to start bringing her to some of the meetings and things so she can tell you on her own. Oh, I'm a representative of them because he's in the black community, even OKC. Let me say closing, that we're trying to partner with any and everyone who wants to come in and be an associate. Again, Michael Washington is simply the legal analyst in that organization. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll be back. Thank you.
I just want to be clear when I speak and say this, especially when it comes to misinformation that's given by others who obviously don't know what's going on. You've already spoken.
Mr. Washington, you've had your time. Have a seat.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I will say that there have been conversations with National Women in Agriculture as well as Dr. Tammy Steele, so I'm not sure where this conversation is coming from. Whereas no one is trying to eliminate anyone from the process, whereas also when we had this health task force originated in May, we sent an email to her and asked her to come to the table, and she did not. We were wanting to help and assist with her in any way that we could. Therefore, when she did come to the table, it was after the fact when we could have really been able to do a lot of things. However, when it comes to community gardens, when it comes to other things that have been included in MAPS 4, I have already spoken to her, and a representative from the mayor's office has also spoken to her about what the possibilities are. Our parks director has spoken with her about what those possibilities are. So the conversation has already started and begun. I guess because now we have someone else in the conversation, it's as if it never happened. So I just want to make sure and ensure to say that that conversation has already started. And I think the problem, and it's not I think, the problem is when you have, again, those people in the community that are not vested in the community, they want to come back and have say-so and use the community to tell their narrative. And that's where I have a very big problem when it comes to a store that's closed now to reopen and use the people of the community to tell the narrative of, oh, we're back and we're going to use you to help us rebuild and reopen our store. No, that's not how this should work. And our community should be aware of what's going on when it comes to those things that are taking place in our community. And with that, I'll be done, but it's very frustrating when you are trying to do work in the community and you have people that have no idea and come at the end of the conversation to say, oh, I'm taking over and this is what's going on.
Okay, so that concludes all the citizens who signed up to speak. We had executive sessions from items 3A. Yes.
I'm sorry, just real quick. Going back to Joy's concern, the police, just for clarity's sake, the police aren't waiting for any action from the Horseshoe to be able to cite an underage person on a scooter. I'm not. Is that true? I don't know.
I am not aware of any issues with that. I know that they can enforce like traffic laws, and I would have to inquire about that just to make sure I'm clear on the underage.
We adopted an ordinance on scooters that I assume had an age on it, so that would be enforceable.
I just don't know in terms of like what fines we've associated with that, but anything that's allowed as far as enforcement of traffic laws would be allowed with scooters, just like it would any other motor vehicle.
Can someone let us know?
Yeah.
Because I worry about
I'll confirm that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we are returning now to our executive sessions 3A2, 3B2, 3C2, and we will return, and we may consider resolutions found at 3A1, 3B1, and 3C1. We will be back. All right, seeing a quorum, we're going to resume the meeting, and we now return back to item 3A1. This is a resolution establishing a new annual salary for the city manager, et cetera, and I believe that Councilman Greenwell has a motion.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I'd like to make the following motion. First of all, with respect to item 3A1 in regards to the annual salary for the city manager, Craig Freeman, I would like to propose his salary that'll be effective beginning January 1st, 2020, shall be $257,911.43, plus that he would also be allowed to continue to receive all other benefits provided at the time of his appointment or allowed by city policy.
And that's amending the second to last, be it further resolved in the resolution.
Yes, and also, I'm sorry, I failed to include that he would also be entitled to a $7,000 car allowance.
Okay. Has that checked all the boxes? All right. Is there a second? All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to item 3B1. This is a resolution establishing a new annual salary for the municipal councilor, et cetera. And I believe Councilman Greenwell has a motion.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. With respect to the municipal councilor, I'd like to make the following motion that effective January 1, 2020, his annual salary will begin to be $207,684.17, and that he shall also continue to receive all other benefits provided at the time of his appointment or allowed by city policy, and also that his annual car allowance shall be $7,000.
Okay. Is there a second? All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to item 3C1, a resolution establishing a new annual salary for the city auditor, et cetera. And I believe Councilman Greenwell has a motion.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. With respect to the city auditor, Jim Williamson, I'd like to make the following motion, that effective January 1, 2020, his annual salary shall become $169,031.12, and that his annual car allowance shall be $7,000, and that he shall also continue to receive all other benefits provided at the time of his appointment or allowed by city policy.
Okay. Is there a second? Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And that concludes all of our business, and we are adjourned.